And so we're doing a series called What Now? Searching for Hope in Hard Times. Each week, it felt like the best question to ask with our minister and friend gone, that we ask, what now? What comes next? There may not be an answer to the question why. There rarely is, but there is always an answer to the question, what now? So we're asking it in a variety of different ways throughout the month of August. You'll see the slide up there. That's our August sermon series here in CW. Each week we'll ask the question. And Ryan may be the only one that noticed this, but maybe you did too. Points if you did. Each sermon title is a song title because you just can't get the music out of the musician or whatever. So this morning, the title of my message is Everything Falls Apart. Positive, encouraging, and uplifting for your Sunday morning. Everything falls apart. So I want to use, naturally, I'm going to use two framing references. One of them, naturally, is a song, and the other is a movie. Because that's kind of how I make my way through the world, with music and movie quotes. So that's what we're going to do this morning. You'll indulge me. That's how it is. The title of today's message is Everything Falls Apart. Everything Falls Apart is a song by a 90s rock band called Dog's Eye View. Does anyone in here besides Ryan Ford recognize that song? Has anybody ever heard it? Okay, so somebody is here. Everything falls apart. We should have sang. Then you get the idea. It's a song from their debut album, Happy Nowhere, which we've got a picture of that. That's the album cover up there, Happy Nowhere. It just keeps getting more encouraging. We got Everything Falls Apart from Happy Nowhere. That's the band right there. This song and all of their songs were written by their lead singer, Peter Stewart. He's the guy, the dapper fellow in the jacket and the wavy hair. He wrote all the songs. Peter Stewart was no stranger to tragedy and hardship. His father died when he was 8 years old. And that's actually the subject of his very first song that he wrote. Well, fast forward several years and many songs later, and he's making a living as a singer-songwriter in New York. He's playing clubs and coffee houses, doing pretty well for himself. Eventually has the opportunity to go on tour and open for Tori Amos. Some of you may know the music of Tori Amos, but then after that, he got to open for one of my favorite bands, Counting Crows. So he knew Adam Duritz and Counting Crows, so he got to tour with them. Well, he signed a record deal with Columbia Records, and he formed the band Dog's Eye View because the record execs told him, well, you never make it as a solo artist, you need a band. And so he's like, okay, we'll call it Dog's Eye View. So he forms this band, and he has a meeting set up with a music producer. You'll forgive this. This is like VH1 behind the music this morning, so that's what you get. He sets up this meeting with a producer that he's basically obsessed with. He really, really, really wants to work with him. At this point, everything is falling into place until that meeting. So he flies from New York down to New Orleans, has the meeting. He has a couple days set aside. Basically, the guy does not take him seriously. He doesn't listen to his demos. He's only half there. It just doesn't work out. So naturally, Peter is very disappointed at this, and he's in New Orleans. So for his last night in New Orleans, can you guess what he does? He goes out and he gets drunk, like plastered, smashed. Let the good times roll. Well, the next morning, with a massive hangover, he hops onto a plane back to New York. And in 15 minutes on that plane, he writes a song. It is the song, Everything Falls Apart. Last little bit of trivia for you. This song was never actually intended to even be a single on the record. Actually, Adam Duritz, the singer of Counting Crows, is Jaden in here? I don't know. We need to work this into trivia somehow. He said you should cut this song from the album, but he didn't, and it became their hit. Dog's Eye View is what you call a one-hit wonder, and Everything Falls Apart is their one hit. So if you haven't heard the song, I just want to share a couple of the lyrics here. The first line is one of the best first lines that I've ever heard. Don't look now, things just got worse. Do you feel those words sometimes? Like, don't look now. As Brenda McBride once told me, life is just lifing, It's just what's happening. Don't look now, things just got worse. The lyrics of the chorus are, everything falls apart. Then I get to try to put it back together. Everything falls apart, and you can count on that like you can count on bad, bad weather. Everything falls apart, the song says, and you can count all that. We know this to be true. We feel it in our bones. The things we build fall apart. The things we own fall apart. The things we love fall apart. Plans fall apart. Buildings fall apart. Where's Robert Hollis? Do buildings fall apart? Okay, yeah. That's right. Buildings, air conditioning units fall apart. Relationships fall apart. Our belief systems fall apart. Our bodies fall apart. Everything falls apart. That's not pessimism, it's just reality. Okay, so that's the song. The other frame of reference is a quote from a film. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's probably the most quoted movie. It's the movie I quote most often in my life. A friend of mine in high school and I used to have quote-offs where we would just do scenes from this movie on the spot. And I'm convinced that there is a quote from this movie for every single situation in life and every sermon. And that movie is, of course, The Princess Bride. Absolute cinema. Released in 1987 and directed by the late Rob Reiner, this movie starred Robin Wright and Cary Elwes and Mandy Patinkin and Andre the Giant and Chris Sarandon and Billy Crystal and Carol Kane and a whole bunch of, it's a stacked cast. It's pretty fantastic. The film has everything. Fencing, fighting. You know this line if you've seen the movie. Torture, revenge, giants, monsters, chases, escapes. I'm doing it in the Peter Falk voice here. True love, miracles. There's one particular quote that I want to draw your attention to, and it's spoken by the hero Wesley, disguised as the dread pirate Roberts, in a conversation that he has with Princess Buttercup, as she is describing to him how she lost her true love, not knowing that that's him that she's talking to. She talks about the pain that she is feeling. He makes a humorous comment in response, and she responds, "You mock my pain." Maybe you see the scene in your mind or hear the words. And that is when the dread pirate Roberts, aka Wesley, drops this truth bomb. Life is pain, Highness. Anyone who says differently is selling something. Life is pain. That is the honest truth. If we are alive, we experience pain. The pain of rejection, the pain of loss, the pain of grief, the pain of sickness, the pain of disappointment. Don't worry, this is going to get better at some point. We're going to turn a corner. The pain of sickness, the pain of disappointment, the pain of betrayal, the pain of depression. I could give you plenty more examples of pain, but I know that I don't have to. You know what it is. You know what pain is. Life is pain, and everything falls apart, it would seem. Now, the Bible does not shy away from these hard and painful realities. It is filled with honest words articulating the human experience of pain. You find this in the stories, both Old Testament and New Testament, in the Psalms, in the prophets, in the wisdom literature, in the Gospels, in the epistles. There's even a whole book in the Bible that's devoted to the articulation of pain and suffering. That's the book of Lamentations. Now, Lamentations is written from very particular historical circumstances of destruction and exile. So I'm not going to stand up here and say, well, the authors and editors of Lamentations meant that exactly for me, because they did not. But Lamentations, like any good literature, can be used as lenses through which to look at our own experiences of pain and suffering. Here are just a couple select verses from Lamentations, just to give you an idea of what the book is, if you haven't read it in a while, and maybe you haven't. How lonely sits the city that once was full of people. That's the first verse. Look and see if there is any sorrow like my sorrow. My eyes are spent with weeping. My stomach churns. Okay, you get the idea. You're probably not going to find these verses on a desk calendar or a journal at Lifeway. Maybe there's a special Lamentations journal, in which case, if you ever find it, please tell me. I need one. But most likely you're not. However, when everything falls apart, when life falls apart, when you get the diagnosis, when your loved one is sick, when your relationship and your marriage falls apart, or your body falls apart, words like these from Lamentations and other passages in Scripture can validate our very real experience of pain and suffering. we find that we're not alone. We're not the first ones to experience what we have experienced. They give us a liturgy of sacred sorrow. And this is really important because when things fall apart, it is not healthy or helpful to simply drown out the pain with religious platitudes and encouraging Bible verses, good as they may be, and emotive worship experiences. I love those. I try to stick with that instead of the pain as often as I possibly can. But this is not healthy or helpful in the long run. This is what is called spiritual bypassing. We have to make space for our pain within ourselves, with each other, and before God. We all search for hope in hard times, but hope that ignores reality is shallow and short-lived. Denial and avoidance may provide temporary relief and may even be necessary for a time as a survival mechanism. But eventually, we must honestly come to terms with reality. Much suffering is added to our pain because we cannot accept what is. We live in illusions. We grasp onto things that we can't hold on to. So we have more suffering and more suffering on top of our pain. We must accept what is. We don't have to like it. We don't have to agree with it. We don't have to have a good mood or a good attitude about it. But to move forward, we have to accept that, as John David often reminds us, it is what it is. We got to be real about our very real lives if we are going to find real hope. And y'all, I believe that the gospel has very real hope for our very real pain. Hope for me, hope for you, hope for the whole universe. It doesn't assure us that we'll necessarily have a supernatural deliverance from hard times. We are told, in fact, Jesus said, in the world you will have tribulation. Hard times will come. There's no easy answer. There's no quick solution. There's nothing I can certainly say this morning that'll make it all better. But there are two comforts, two convictions that have given me hope in my own times of despair and pain. I've only preached one funeral in my whole life so far. And as standing by a graveside, these were the only two things that I felt, besides celebrating the person and their life, when it came to gospel comfort and hope, these are the only two things that I felt were worth holding up, were worth saying. So this is all I got, and I'm going to give it to you. My first conviction, I really believe this, is that God is with us. God is with us. Throughout the centuries of human thought and religion, there have been a lot of theodicies proposed. Now, that's just a big fancy theological word that means an attempt to reconcile the presence of pain and suffering with the existence of God, and a loving and good God at that. It's a theodicy. It's a mystery. I've heard a lot of explanations, some of them better than others, but none of them have fully answered the questions in an intellectually or emotionally satisfying way. I think it's important for me to be, if I'm a preach, it's important for me to be honest about that. I've always got to, yeah, but what about this? So if you're feeling that, that's okay. You don't have to stuff down those questions. It's okay to be honest. In a world where suffering and pain are ubiquitous, where the powerful continually oppress the weak, where tragedy and loss strike us over and over and over again, like we don't have any, it doesn't let up. It's like one thing after the next. You feel that? Have you felt that? In a world like that, the answers sometimes just don't cut it. They don't cut it. For me, this question of suffering, this question of everything falling apart, like so many, continues to be an elusive mystery. And yet, and also, in my pain, I remember Jesus. In the gospel of Jesus, we find the story of a God who is not only aware of our pain and suffering and darkness, but one who enters into it willingly with us. We sang during prayer, the 90s song, of course, "What if God was one of us?" The gospel says that God most certainly was in Jesus one of us. In the words of the early Christian hymn, which we find in Philippians 2, though he existed in the form of God, he did not regard equality with God as something to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, assuming human likeness, and being found in appearance as a human, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Jesus is God living with us in humility and compassion and mercy and forgiveness. It's God dying with us in solidarity and in self-giving, sacrificial, co-suffering love. He was and is, Scripture says, the man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. Many of you have heard of or are familiar, at least to some extent, with the German theologian, pastor, and Nazi resistor Dietrich Bonhoeffer. One of my favorite quotes from Bonhoeffer comes from a collection of his writings called Letters and Papers from Prison. He wrote this from a prison cell. He wrote, "God consents to be pushed out of the world and onto the cross. God is weak and powerless in the world, and in precisely this way, and only so, is at our side and helps us. Christ helps us not by virtue of his omnipotence, but rather by virtue of his weakness and suffering. This is the crucial distinction between Christianity and other religions. Human religiosity directs people in need to the power of God in the world, God as Deus ex machina. The Bible directs people toward the powerlessness and suffering of God. Only the suffering God can help." The gospel is not a theodicy. It does not explain away pain and evil, and yet in it, we find this very real hope that even in our deepest pain, even in our darkness, the Lord knows, for he has been there. He has walked this trail of tears before us, and he stands beside us now with the scars and the hole marks still in his hand. This idea is beautifully captured by a poem that I discovered a couple of years ago. I've shared it. I may have shared it in here or in traditional or book club. I don't know. But I want to share it with you again. It's one of my favorites. It's by Edward Shalito, and it's called Jesus of the Scars. "If we have never sought, we seek thee now. Thine eyes burn through the dark, our only stars. We must have sight of thorn pricks on thy brow. We must have thee, O Jesus of the scars. The heavens frighten us, they are too calm. In all the universe we have no place. Our wounds are hurting, where is the balm? Lord Jesus, by thy scars we claim thy grace. If when the doors are shut thou drawest near, only reveal those hands, that side of thine. We know today what wounds are, have no fear. Show us thy scars, we know the countersign. The other gods were strong, but thou wast weak. They rode, but thou didst stumble to a throne. But to our wounds, only God's wounds can speak. And not a God has wounds, but thou alone. It is to this God, Jesus of the scars, the suffering God, the crucified God, that we come to find hope and help in our pain. God is with you right here, right now. My second conviction, the second thing that I would hold on to, doesn't explain things away, but it is my faith and my hope, is that all shall be well. I think there's a lot of confusion and misunderstanding about what the New Testament actually teaches us about hope and death. Now, this confusion is understandable because it seems to teach a whole lot of different things, and not all of them seem to necessarily line up. Also, we're dependent on translations. And as you know, where there is translation, sometimes things can be lost in translation. I mean, imagine the conversations you have with the people that you know the best and the most in the language that both of you apparently understand and end up in completely different places. So it's understandable if we come away with some confusion. Different metaphors are used, different images, different understandings. And to some extent, most or not all of it is predicated on a belief or a faith in something that you can neither confirm nor deny. Faith is, after all, the evidence of things not seen, which is perpetually and eternally frustrating. I get it. However, I believe that if we are going to talk about gospel hope and comfort when everything falls apart and isn't or can't be put back together, we have to talk about resurrection and new creation. not just as a metaphor for growth and personal transformation, but as the very hope of the gospel of Jesus. We see the gospel hope of resurrection in 1 Corinthians 15, which says, "For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed. For this perishable body must put on immortality. When this perishable body puts on imperishability, and this mortal body puts on immortality, then the saying that is written will be fulfilled. Death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting?" It is on that day that we say this. That's like holy trash talk. Like, all right, death, where's your sting? We feel the sting now. It's hubris to say we don't. But on that day, our hope is that we will say, death is no more. So this isn't just about going to heaven when you die. One of my favorite theologians has this great quote. He says, "Heaven is important, but it's not the end of the world." Think about that for a minute. This is resurrection. And of course, there's a variety of different beliefs about resurrection within the Christian tradition, both within the disciples of Christ and other denominations. So I'm just here to share some things that are important to me. You're a theologian too. You do the work. But what I see is that just as Jesus was raised, so shall we be raised. And this gospel hope is not only for human beings, it's for the entire cosmos. And for here, I turn to Romans 8. "I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory about to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the children of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not of its own will, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that creation itself will be set free from its enslavement to decay and will obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning together as it suffers together the pains of labor. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, we have the first fruits of the Spirit. We who have the first fruits of the Spirit groan inwardly while we wait for adoption, the redemption of our bodies. For in hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what one already sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. What we find in Romans 8 is the hope of new creation. You might consider adding that to your theological lexicon and vocabulary. It's the groaning of creation, of all creation, to be set free with the hope that one day it will, that every tear will be wiped away from our eyes, that all, as Samwise Gamgee said, that everything sad will come untrue. All of it restored, every beautiful bit of this broken world that God so loves, the entire cosmos, resurrected, renewed, healed, made whole, put back together. In the words of St. Julian of Norwich, where I drew this quote, "All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." Life is pain, y'all. This is true. Everything falls apart. This is true. And yet, this is not the end. It's not the end of the story. It's not the end of us. Even when it's over, it's not over. All shall be well. A few years ago, a friend of mine, I'll go ahead and invite the musicians to come back up. A few years ago, a friend of mine who was born with a congenital heart defect, his name was Josh, lived 17 years with the struggle, with the pain of life with a congenital heart defect. At 17, they never thought he would make it that far, but he did. He was resilient. He was just plain stubborn. At 17, he got a heart transplant, and he lived for 13 more years because of that transplant. But at age 30, in October of 2011, sadly, tragically, he passed away. When he died, I wrote a song for him. And I want to read a few of the lyrics from that for you to close my message. I called it Resurrection Song. Death is a thief that steals and destroys, an imposter that never belonged. Death is a shadow that covers the earth, but that shadow will fade like the dawn. You always stared death right in the eye. You were so brave and so strong. And death may have silenced your voice for a time, but one day you'll sing a new song. For there is a promise, and there is a light. Though we walk through the valley of shadows in the darkness of the night, we will enter joy unbroken, where all the sadness comes untrue. And on that glorious day, when we get out of our graves, I'll be standing next to you. Amen.